Hey friends, your intrepid librarian, Mrs. Eckert here. Happy New Year! It's New Year's Eve 2016, so it's time for Mrs. Eckert's favorite books of the year. And these are not necessarily books that were published this year, but these are books that I read this year, and these are my top favorites. We're going to do some categories. First up is picture books. Now remember, picture books are for everybody, no matter how old you are. Everybody can love a good picture book. And the first picture book on my list of favorites this year is The Thank You Book by Mo Willems, because who doesn't love Elephant and Piggy? They are amazing. All of them are entertaining for anyone, no matter how old you are. I love them all. And this was their last one, where Elephant and Piggy go through and say thank you to everyone that's been in their books, and even as the reader. I loved it. I got a little verklempt. It was amazing. Second is Mesmerized, How Ben Franklin Solved a Mystery That Baffled All of France by Mara Rockcliffe. This was a Bluebonnet book, and we Skyped with author Mara Rockcliffe to find out all about how she researched and wrote this book, and I just thought it was fascinating. It was a story that I'd never heard before, and it was really interesting, and I loved the illustrations and the way the book was designed and set up. It was just really good. Next up, Penguin Problems by Jory John, which was hysterical. There's this penguin that wakes up in the Antarctic, and his day is just full of nothing but problems. It's cold, and there are predators trying to eat him, and there's too many people on the island, all these penguins everywhere, and they all look the same. He can't recognize anybody. But then a walrus, I think it was a walrus, comes by to remind him of the important things in life. It was really cute, and I loved it. It was a little snarky. Next up is King Baby by Kate Beaton, which was also hysterical. I loved every second of that one. There's this baby who obviously is the king of all of his domain because everybody jumps to his every whim until another baby comes along. It's really cute. Next up is Mother Bruce by Ryan T. Higgins, where a curmudgeonly bear finds himself the sole caretaker of a bunch of baby geese. It's adorable, and the bear is all grumpy, but the geese are adorable. It's really cute. And there's a follow-up called Hotel Bruce that's also really good. You should read that too. And lastly, We Found a Hat by John Klassen. All of John Klassen's hat books are amazing, and this one is no less amazing. There are two turtles, but only one hat. Quite a conundrum for them, because who's going to have the hat? How do you share a hat? It's really cute. You should read all of his hat books. So that's it for picture books. Now let's move on to middle grade chapter books. Chapter books for like 3rd through 6th grade-ish. First up, Rainy Nightingale by Kate DiCamillo. I love everything Kate DiCamillo does, and this one was no exception. The characters are quirky and unique, and the situations are heartwarming and relatable. Definitely check that one out. Next up is Circus Mirandus by Cassie Beasley. This was a Bluebonnet book, and I just loved it. It was kind of magical and sad, and you're gonna cry, and I loved it. And next up is another Bluebonnet, Harriet the Invincible, A Hamster Princess #1 by Ursula Vernon, wherein Harriet, the hamster princess, keeps doing things that people tell her aren't very princess-like. But of course, Harriet thinks, I'm a princess, so by definition, anything I do is princess-like. It's great. It's just so fun. She goes off to like slay dragons and stuff. It's hysterical. You should read it. Next up is Peter Nimble and His Fantastic Eyes by Jonathan Auxier. And I really love the way this author writes. He's just really good with kind of science fiction, fantasy type stuff. It's a good adventure, fantasy adventure. You should totally check it out. He wrote a Bluebonnet last year called The Night Tree. It was really spooky. And next up, The Cat at the Wall by Deborah Ellis. So this middle school girl in America dies and is somehow reincarnated as a cat living like on the wall between Palestine and Israel. And so she sees both sides of the conflict there. And it was really cool just because of that premise, but also because you don't find a lot of children's books about the conflict in Palestine and Israel. So it was a really interesting look and refreshing look at that for kids, I thought. Next up is The Ugly One by Leanne Statland Ellis, which takes place near Machu Picchu a long time ago, in a tribe of people living there, and this girl is kind of deformed and she is shunned by her tribe, but various things happen and she ends up being a really great leader. And it's just really cool, again, because of the placement near Machu Picchu and everything that goes on with that. I thought it was really unique. And lastly, Rain, Rain by Anne M. Martin. So the girl in this book is autistic, has a thing for homophones, which are scattered throughout the book. Homophones being two words that sound the same but are spelled differently and mean different things. And a really clever way that she weaved those into the book. I loved it. And also there's a dog in it, so come on. All right. Next up is YA, that's young adult novels. So for kids in like middle school, high school. I didn't read a whole lot of those this year, but I had three favorites. One, The Sacred Lives of Minnow Bly by Stephanie Oakes. Definitely for your older readers, like upper middle school, probably high school for that one. It's kind of a tough read, but it's really good dealing with cults and the danger of blind faith. It was excellent. Next up was Noggin by John Corey Whaley, where this kid who lives in the future gets really, really sick, but they have the technology to transplant his head onto someone else's body. And so he wakes up like himself, but with a whole new body, and how he deals with that. It was a really interesting concept. And lastly, Harry Potter and the Cursed Child by J.K. Rowling, of course. Parts 1 and 2, which is a play, written as a play. I loved the story. I still wish it was written as a novel though, just because I like novels better. There's more description. All right, lastly, for your mom and dad, my favorite adult books that I read this year. First up is The Wonder by Emma Donoghue, which I just recently finished. And just like her other book, Room, that I really loved, this book was amazing. It was a really interesting premise, and there were lots of good twists and turns, and the end was amazing. I just loved it. I'm going to read like all her things now. Next up is Arrival, which actually originally was published under the title Stories of Your Life and Others by Ted Chiang. The movie Arrival came out this fall, and I loved it. It was a great science fiction movie. But this book is a book of short stories, and every story in there makes you ponder something about the world. It was just really interesting. And next up is But What If We're Wrong? Thinking About the Present as If It Were the Past by Chuck Klosterman. This is a nonfiction book, and he tries to think about what's happening today, like as if people were looking back on it in the future. And he had some just really interesting ways to look at things that are happening in the world today. It was really good. And lastly, Sleeping Giants by Sylvain Neuvel, which was a science fiction novel. The follow-up is coming this April, and I can't wait because the first one was really good. So these people, these scientists, find like these giant robot parts buried deep in the ground, and so of course they have to start gathering all the parts and putting them together to see if they can wake the robot giant up. I don't think it's gonna go well, but I can't wait for the sequel this April. So that's it for my favorite books of 2016. Thanks for sticking through this long video, and here's to some good reading in 2017. Happy New Year!